everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews, and we are here for another Theater Tuesdays, and we're talking theater with the host of the YouTube channel One Man's Opinion, theater critic Tim Leininger. And thank you so much, Tim, for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's nice to do something different than my own thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's been about 6 months or so that I got turned on to your channel, and I've really enjoyed listening to your reviews. It's a lot of fun what you do over there.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So what we like to do with new guests is like to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start your channel and how you got started in your love of all things Broadway and theater.
Well, that's a long answer.
It is, yeah.
Because you have to go all the way back to when I was 10 years old, when I first started getting interested in the performing arts in general, and started studying music at that time. I was a brass player and playing in school bands and stuff like that. And I didn't start really taking an interest in theater until about my senior year of high school, when I fell into making friends with some people from the high school theater departments. I wasn't acting at that point, but I was finding the fascination in it by having friends who were and supporting them and stuff like that. It turned into a point where I took a civics class, or free enterprise class. It was a free enterprise class my senior year at Prescott High School in Arizona. And two of the other people
out west.
Well, I grew up in Riverside, California.
Okay. Yeah.
And we moved to Arizona when I was just before my sophomore year. And we happened to be doing the high school happened to be doing a production of Annie. And two of the cast members were in that free enterprise class. And one of them happened to be playing Warbucks. And we were the concept of the class was that, well, one of the projects in the class was that we had to put two major financial ideas on trial. One was the New Deal and one was Reaganomics.
Oh, wow.
And we ended up being on the defense for the New Deal.
Uh-huh.
And after winning the case, we decided to sing the song "New Deal" from the musical Annie at the end of the trial, which was a fun little addendum to the project, and I found that fun. By the time I went to college, I went to college in a little conservative Methodist college in Kansas, and I was an English major with a music minor. One of the recommended courses was Introduction to Musical Theater. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? By that point, I had already started singing choir and whatnot, and I was still playing in band. I started to learn piano, which is an instrument I've never mastered. And
say, what instrument did you play?
Like I said, I was a brass player. I was a trumpet player, baritone player, French horn player. Those were the instruments I played. In college, I started singing. I started learning piano. Singing came naturally, and one of the recommended courses, like I said, was Introduction to Musical Theater, which was a January term course, was a J-term course, and we did Coppin and Yeston's Phantom, which was my first show.
Uh-huh.
And I was originally cast as myriad different minor roles, and then the guy who was playing Cholet dropped out because he fell ill, and I took over as Cholet, Carlotta's husband, and loved it. And I started acting in everything I can get myself into ever since. And I moved to New York City in 1998 to study musical theater there, and finished the program in the fall of '99. And I performed in New York City in various types of shows. Mostly it was classical stuff. That's kind of where my niche was doing opera and oratorios and things of that nature. That's just kind of where my natural strengths went. I also directed a chamber choir and performed in choirs. Also had some great experiences. Some of my favorite resume things included performing with in the choir, backing up Barbara Streisand
Oh,
in
wow.
2000, and singing at the UN and on the Today Show for Christmas. That was, those were fun. Those were like some of the fun projects that I had while I was in New York. Eventually, I kind of realized, I'm not making any money doing this,
Uh-huh.
and was starting to get a little older, getting into my about to hit 30, and I was like, let's refocus here. So I was dating this woman who ended up being my first wife, and she moved to Connecticut, and I followed her up there, and with the intention of going back to school and getting a journalism degree, because I wanted to write about theater, or at least about the arts in general. So I did that. I moved up to Connecticut. Wrong year to do it. It was 2008, and that's when
Oh, no.
the market collapsed, and we had a big depression. So I couldn't find a full-time job in order to pay for school. So I joined the Navy and did that for 4 years, between 2009 to 2013. And when I got out of the Navy, I used the GI Bill to go to UConn to get my journalism degree. Graduated 2016 and immediately started working for a newspaper called the Journal Inquirer, which I still work for, doing feature stories for them. And I started in the news department. Now I do feature stories, and they had just lost their theater critic. And when that settled down, I rose my hand and said, "Hey, I can write about theater. Like I've been involved in it for years now, for over a decade. Let me do it." And they're like, "Okay, sure." So I started writing reviews for the newspaper, and I think it was late 2016. And yeah, because I think my first show I reviewed was Hartford Stage's production of A Christmas Carol, which is an annual thing that they were doing at the time. And it's actually coming back this year, which I'm thrilled about because it's a fantastic production.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I think it's hard to write about Christmas Carol, though, because a lot of the theaters do it here, because it's so hard for them to bring anything new to the production, because people don't want anything new. People, they go for the tradition of it. They go to have the same thing every year. So like, how do you write about it in an articulate way? I think it's challenging.
Well, the thing is, it's like if it's an annual production like that, yes, it becomes more difficult because you end up writing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
The nice thing was that when I moved to Connecticut, one of the jobs that I had, because I was jumping from job to job, was working on that production in 2008. I was part of the deck crew for Hartford Stage's production for the Hartford Stage Christmas Carol, adapted and directed by Michael Wilson. And so I have a strong familiarity with that show. And then when I got out of the Navy and came back in 2013, before I went back to school in the spring of 14, I went back and worked on the show again, in which there had been a lot of updates to it. There was a whole new fly system, and I got to operate the fly system and break it, and then fix it and never break it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's this whole scene where the stage opens up and the ghost of Jacob Marley flies out of the stage and haunts Scrooge in his bedroom, and it's a fantastic sequence. So I got to bring Marley up out of hell, for lack of a better word. So I did that. But what eventually, when the pandemic happened and all theater shut down, newspapers got hit really bad.
Sure.
Because businesses were closing and they couldn't pay for advertising anymore. And and so what happened with us was that with the advertising being pulled, the newspaper could no longer afford to pay me the stipend, because I was writing reviews as a freelance writer on top of my full-time job for them, and they could no longer afford to pay me for my reviews. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I always wanted to do a YouTube show, and it was more, the concept for that was more of a film focus. And you're a Patreon member, so you've seen some of my podcasts on there, which will eventually start to transfer over to YouTube for more public consumption. But at the moment, I didn't have anything, so I'm like, well, let's dive into this and see what I can come up with. I have a friend who's a podcaster also, and he does a few YouTube shows. His name's Michael Levy. He has a retro video game show that he does called Dude, You Haven't Played This Game.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has a video game music podcast called WVG or VGXM radio, video game music radio. It's a lot of fun. But anyways, he showed me how to get all this started, and it's how I got to where I am. I already had all the clout with all the theaters. They knew me, and were receptive to the new concept. And the critics organizations I was with were all receptive to it. I'm a member of the Connecticut Critics Circle. I'm a member of the American Theater Critics Association. I'm a member of the Outer Critics Circle. And I just put in my application for the drama desk. So hopefully I can be a part of that too soon.
Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night, or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Amazing.
Anyways, that's my story. It's a little long-winded, but it's kind of where it all came from.
Oh, I think that's great. So was that production of Annie, was that the high school production, was that one of the first pieces of musical theater really influence you, or did you have others that you were that you saw early on?
Well, when it comes to musical theater itself, Annie, yes, had a big impact. There was a staged version. There was the original Broadway production of Camelot was on TV a lot when I was a kid for some reason. I don't know if it was PBS or what, but I was fascinated by that because it was, knights and castles and fantasy stuff, which I was always kind of into. So I would watch that. Plus there were movie musicals that I was very much into. It's like Mary Poppins was one of my favorite movies as a kid growing up. Granted, I probably turned it off about when the bank sequence starts to happen, or fast forward it to the point of after the sidewalk chalk fantasy sequence, the Chim Chim Cheree sequence, and then after that ended, I'd fast forward to the chimney sweep sequence.
Or, I can see that. Yeah.
The Jolly Holiday sequence. That's what it was called. The Jolly Holiday sequence, and then fast forward to the Chim Chim sequence.
Yeah.
Granted, I was like 8, so.
Nice. Do you remember the first Broadway show that you ever saw?
Yes. Being that I grew up on the West Coast, I didn't see anything until I actually moved to New York in '98. The school I went to, we got to go see a show in the first week as kind of a welcoming gift, and that was Chicago. And BB Newirth was still in it, and Karen Ziemba had taken over as Roxy at that point. And I remember because I was seated in the back of the balcony or mezzanine. I don't remember which theater they were in at that time, and I was like 2 rows from back. And after when the overture is about to finish and the stage trap opens up and BB Newirth comes out, and she's underlit, and as I vividly remember it, even 25 years later, and it was electrifying. The fact that she was able to capture my attention from the back of the house by doing nothing except for posing in this position and displaying that energy across a Broadway house and feeling it from the back of the balcony was electric. It was galvanizing.
I just saw Chicago for the first time on stage last fall. I was in New York for the New York Film Festival, and I had Monday night free, and it was one of the only shows playing on Monday night. So I went and saw Chicago, and it's a very simple show, but impactful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have a high school friend who I ran into who was also in the Navy by chance in Virginia Beach, and he and his family went to New York and saw Chicago, and they hated it because it wasn't what they were expecting, because it was so simple in concept. They were hoping for a Phantom of the Opera or Miss Saigon or Sunset Boulevard with big opulent sets, and instead you've got this little intimate jazz show, which is designed to be almost like a cabaret, and it's brilliant. I love the show.
Yeah. So you also love classic films, as you said, as part of your Patreon, and a lot of classic films have been turned into musicals. I mean, we had this year New York, and Some Like It Hot, and some of these things. So I guess, how do you feel about that? And what are some of your favorites, screen to movie translations?
Very few. I think most screen to stage adaptations don't work, and they don't work because people try to do too much to make it different, instead of paying attention to what the heart of the original film was about. I think that's the big problem with Beetlejuice. I know there's a lot of people who are big fans of Beetlejuice, but I thought it was awful.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
because they ignore the heart of the film, which are the Dietzes, the married couple that die at the beginning of the movie. It's so preoccupied with Beetlejuice, who in the film has less than 15 minutes of screen time. And in the musical, you decide, well, we're gonna have him on stage almost the entire show. And I'm like, well, but Beetlejuice is a one-trick pony of a character. He's got one gimmick, and that's to be obnoxiously funny and villainously funny. It's that milquetoast white married couple who from New England, who are that is ironically the heart of the story. And if you ignore that, you kind of miss the message.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I did see that last March, and I was pretty blown away by just the spectacle of it all.
Right.
It had some of the most amazing production design I've ever seen.
And that's one
but
of the
you're
things.
right about the story.
They that's coincidentally, that's the same problem with New York, is that gorgeous production. Beowulf Boritt should win best set design for New York, because it's incredible. And if there's lighting, and they could easily win lighting and projection design as well, because of how gorgeously conceived the show is. But the book is such a mess because it's so scattered.
Mhm.
and you don't have time to care for any of the characters because they're not defined enough, and there's just too much going on.
Mhm.
If we were to talk about a great adaptation, I think Some Like It Hot is fantastic.
Mm.
That is a wonderful screen to stage adaptation. I think one of the reasons why is because of the time difference and the less familiarity I think people will have with it. Because you got to remember, Some Like It Hot came out in the like 1950 something or 1960. It's a wonderful film. It's one of my favorite comedies ever. Uh, a Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon and Marilyn
Mhm.
Monroe. It's a wonderful, wonderful comedy, and the musical captures that same spirit. They don't change the heart of the film in order to make what it is, and it works. Uh, and there's only a few narrative changes that are of any significant importance that are changed, and I'm okay with those changes because the overall concept of why the film works is still there.
Mhm.
When you've got musical adaptations like Groundhog's Day, which was like, it was all right. Tootsie, same thing. Mrs. Doubtfire wasn't bad. I thought that was a
Mhm.
decent one.
Mhm. Did you get to
Uh,
see Almost Famous?
I did see Almost Famous. I wasn't a fan of that either.
Yeah. I saw it last fall, and I mean, it's hard for me to not have a good time just because I love going out to the theater.
Right.
But I was not surprised that it didn't last long. I just felt like the story was kind of awkward in the translation,
Yeah.
with this 14-year-old or 16-year-old, however old he was, like in these very adult situations. And it just, I don't know, it just wasn't charming. I think that was the
Yeah.
problem. Like the movie manages to somehow take that same concept and be super charming.
Right. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah, Almost Famous is like, I felt like we were first act in particular. By the end of it, I was, oh my God, I got to go sit. I have to sit through another hour of this. Oh,
Yeah.
help me.
Yeah. What about the Disney musicals? What do you have a favorite, or what do you think of those?
I have a bias towards The Lion King
Mhm.
because uh, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyways, uh, uh, and do a name drop here. But when I first moved to New York in '98, uh, the church I went to happened to be the same church that Christopher Jackson was going to at the time.
Okay.
And he was playing Simba when I first got to New York. And he and I became quick friends at the time. And I would go, and I went and saw The Lion King 3 times just to support him.
Yeah.
And so that I think the Lion King's the best adaptation they've ever done. Uh, Quickly followed by Beauty and the Beast. I think Beauty and the Beast is just absolute magic, and I think Disney, after a few failures like Tarzan and I think there was another one somewhere in there.
I know a lot of people love it, but I was not a fan of Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, I wasn't a fan of.
No, no.
It kind of it lost the heart again. It was
Yeah, I know they
that
were going like off of the book more than the movie because of, I think that was all part of them even being allowed to do it. But I just did not like the introduction of that of that nanny
right.
character. And I don't know, I don't care for it.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it loses its heart. Uh,
Yeah.
and there was a Little Mermaid adaptation
Yeah,
that was
not good.
done that tanked. Uh, and but I think that the issue was, but I think the issue was that after a few failures, Disney stopped investing what they needed to invest to make the shows work to the
Yeah.
heights of expectation. It's I think that was the problem with Frozen, and I think it's the problem with Aladdin is that when you have, which are good shows, but they're not great on the scale of Beauty and the Beast and The Lion
Yeah.
King. Because
Fair.
particularly Aladdin, in which I mean, it's
I do think
a
Aladdin
soft.
benefits from having they have some original unused Howard Ashman songs.
Mhm.
And so I think whereas in most of these shows, the new songs are totally forgettable. Whereas I like Proud of Your Boy and like there's an authenticity to those songs that I think makes it better
Yeah.
in that regard, at least.
Well, the thing was is that it was a softball. It was just like a slow pitch right down the middle that
Yeah.
they could have had a home run with Aladdin in regards to the visual effects. I mean, the fact that they already had the Lion King with that fantastic wildebeest run sequence
Yeah.
where Mufasa dies, and I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, that's brilliant. So when they announced Aladdin, I'm like, they've got to have the escape the uh from the from the well sequence with him on the magic carpet fleeing from boils of lava coming behind him like in the movie, and I'm like, and it's not there, and I'm like, how do you have this awesome action sequence and just excise it from the story, because it
Yeah.
would have looked, because you were able to pull it off in the Lion King. Why can't you pull it off with Aladdin, particularly now when you have all these improvements in projections?
Yeah.
And I'm usually one who hates projections, but mostly because they again tend to get overused and distracting. But here it was like, just bring it and
Hmm.
hit it hard. But again,
Yeah.
I just think that Disney one too many flops, and they decided, you know what, we're just not going to invest the amount of money that we're going that we
Hmm.
did before, because the theater market is just way too volatile.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I
Yeah.
wanted a big bloody snake to come out of the stage at the end
Yeah.
also.
Well, and I know that's not Disney, but I have to say that one of this style of musical that I thought was really great is Shrek the Musical. It was so much better than I expected, and it was so funny. I thought Lord Farquaad in that movie that show was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't get to see Shrek until I saw it at Connecticut Repertory up at UConn, and fun show. Less said about that production, the better, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought the script was really funny.
Well, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that one's a gimme. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's another show where it's like, like, here, let me. It's like, here, let me give you millions and millions of dollars right
Yeah.
now. You're like, so that I think that was just an obvious choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some people though complain about the fact that the amusement park-ification of a Broadway. How do you feel about that? That you have, you know,
Being that I moved to New York in 1998, I got to see the tail end of the seedy side of Times Square. Uh, Giuliani was still in his process of cleaning up the area and
mhm.
bringing in the Disneyfied atmosphere of Times Square. And it's it's tough, because I get it. There's an aesthetic of Midtown New York and what it was like in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. I've got friends who've lived in New York their entire lives, and they're like, excuse me, and they're like, it's just not the same. And I'm like, I get that. It's like, when I first got there, walking around the city, there were still prostitutes on every corner. There was still adult shops and porn houses on every second corner, and they weren't hard to miss. They were pretty obvious and pretty out
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
so I don't mind that being removed. I would like better control over the so-called performance artists in Times Square. I love what they've done with Times Square and getting rid of the streets and making it more accessible for pedestrian traffic. I think that's fantastic. And uh, I think it sucks for the Macy's parade, because the Macy's parade used to go right down Broadway down to Herald Square, but they can't do that anymore. They got to go around. But aside from that, I like that it's more open space. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with 42nd Street, 43rd Street, and Broadway and 7th Avenue right there, because so much work is being done on that on those couple blocks there. See what they're going to come up with there. But I think it's an exaggeration to say it's a quote Disneyfied New York. I think it's just people who look to the past with rose-tinted glasses and think it was awesome. And I'm like, no, go back and watch Taxi Driver and Mean Streets and Midnight Cowboy and what was the one I just watched? Serpico, and tell me that is really what you want things to go back to, you know?
Yeah, for real.
I like it being cleaned up.
Yeah.
I'm totally happy with it being cleaned up. But I want, if we could just get those bloody costumed character people out of there, I'd be fine. Street performers, great, let them perform. But those costume people, just I don't need them.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I can see when people are saying about how everything kind of has to be part of an IP or part of an existing franchise of some kind, even on Broadway. But I think that we sometimes get like our most, some of our most creative stuff through that. Like, or we get some really good stuff. Like I really enjoyed the Mean Girls music. I thought that was really, really good.
Oh yeah, Mean Girls. I thought Mean Girls is a great adaptation.
Yeah. And so I think it just depends on the adaptation. Like obviously there's some big franchise stuff that ends up failing spectacularly. So it's not, I mean, like Spider-Man and the Spider-Man show. That's infamous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a guarantee by any means.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that there's nobody to blame but the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't, if people are paying for it, then that's what's going to be there. If people don't pay for it, guess what? If people aren't going to pay tickets to see something, guess what? It's going to close quick.
Mm-hmm.
And producers learn that, and they react to that.
Right.
And that's one of my biggest problems with jukebox shows is I generally have a strong disdain for jukebox shows, mostly because they're vapid. They're mostly brainless, and I have very little love for most of them. But then they're just big, quick cash grabs because people are familiar with the artist that's being represented in the jukebox show, and they want to, and they are attracted to familiarity.
Yeah. Which one would you prefer? Like something like Mamma Mia that's like kind of crafts this fictional story around the songs, or something like Jersey Boys, which is about the artist?
I'm not a big fan of either.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the best jukebox show ever made that I've seen is Beautiful, the Carole King one.
Oh, okay.
That one is, because they do both.
Mm-hmm.
It's not them trying to take songs and shoehorn them into the narrative and try to make them fit when the songs weren't written for that purpose. And it's not just, oh, we're going to stop the book now, we're going to stop the story now and perform these songs. It's kind of an amalgam of both, where the songs play for one, where the song fits. If the song fits for the story, we'll put it in and have it move the story forward. And if it's a performance track, then it fit. Then we'll put it in this way. But regardless, the songs, the reason why Beautiful works so well is because the songs, even if we're quote stopping the show for a song because the characters are performing it, it still fits within the narrative enough that you are understanding character motivations as to why the songs were written and how the characters are moving forward because while the song is being performed. You don't get that often. Tina does a pretty decent job with that, but
yeah,
agree.
was so amazing.
Yeah.
The actress, I forget.
Yeah.
She was, I mean, the story was, I mean, it was very predictable. We all know the story, but I just thought she was outstanding.
But Beautiful for me is my favorite jukebox show.
Okay.
Then you've got shows that just take us that force songs into a book that you're watching it and you're like, this makes no sense. Why are we singing about this? It's because it's got one line in it that's supposed to make some kind of connection to the character. I'm like, oh, shoot me now.
Yeah, I can have fun with Mamma Mia. I don't, but yeah, it's a stretch sometimes.
Right. Well, Mamma Mia needs a great cast.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have the cast to make it as outlandish as it should be, then it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. So if somebody were going to come to you and say, to make a Broadway musical off of a movie that has not already been made into a musical, what would you pick? I mean, I think that, and I know there's been talks about it being made into a musical and a couple times, but I think The Princess Bride is the one that I think it has like all the spots.
Yeah.
For songs.
Yeah. Princess Bride would be a good one.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be really fun.
I recall that there was a Karate Kid musical.
Oh.
That's been done. That was done off Broadway about 10, 15 years ago. I'm curious to see how that would come about.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I just saw I mean, it's different, but I saw the Spirited Away live on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I mean, just the filming of it, that a pro shot, that was unbelievable. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, there was some movie that came to mind not too long ago, which I was thinking, that would make a decent musical. And I it's slipped my mind.
Yeah, maybe it'll come to you. If it comes to you,
here's a fun one. It's a pretty much forgotten film, but Born Yesterday.
Oh, that would be interesting because you would work all the Beatles songs.
No, not Yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Born Yesterday. It's a 1950 film with Jennifer Holliday in it. Or Judy Holliday.
Right. That's right.
Judy Holliday, William Holden. And it was directed by George Cukor. And it's a fantastic, smart comedy that could easily be adapted into a musical. Pillow Talk. Pillow Talk would be a great adaptation.
Yeah, that would be really good. I agree.
They would have to rework it a bit to get rid of some of the sexism in it.
Yeah.
There's an adaptation. There's a musical adaptation of The Nutty Professor that's being worked on right now, and that's the Jerry Lewis Nutty Professor.
Yeah,
that's in the works.
But I think some of that sexism is intended as commentary. On
sometimes yes, but sometimes it's just the
like the whole Rex Stetson, the whole like that most of that stuff with him being that cowboy and that all that is really just commenting on the movie heroes of the time and the tropes.
Right. But the whole concept, the ending though will have to be reworked a little bit.
Yeah.
The ending of Pillow Talk would have to be reworked a little, so that it doesn't look like he is abducting her and then forcing her to be his
Right.
true love.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Another
yeah,
one kind of like that I think that if they'd have to tweak things, work things around, but The Quiet Man, I think you could make an
that could
interesting
be fun.
musical.
But with the success of Girl from the North Country,
Uh-huh.
and once, granted, I wasn't a fan of Girl from the North Country,
I've never seen that one.
but that having that kind of Irish music kind of style, I think it would work. Well, granted, Girl from the North Country is actually set in Minnesota. It's not set in Ireland, and it's got Bob Dylan music, but the style would work.
Okay. Yeah.
The musical style would work for The Quiet Man. I think
Yeah.
and if you can have a great big brawl on stage, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be really fun, I think. And the big kiss, like
Yes,
in
yes, with
the
all the
wind, that would
rain
be
and
fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
If someone could have ET sitting in the
Yeah.
balcony watching, that would be even better.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did a video recently on my channel of what I think are underrated shows, Broadway
Yes,
musicals.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have any that you think are underrated?
I think you have some good ones here that I'll reinforce.
Yeah.
She Loves Me is one of my favorite musicals, hand down.
Yeah.
Children of
So
Eden
good.
was another great pick. I think when it comes to underrated shows off the top of my head, Mac and Mabel,
Oh, I don't know that one.
that's a fantastic musical. Drat the Cat, I think, is a
Oh.
terribly underappreciated musical. Yeah, Mac and Mabel is about it's about I was just reading a book about on this. It's about Mac is a Hollywood film producer back in the silent era, and Mabel is one of the actresses that kind of starts to make it big in the silent era. Max Sennett and Mabel Normand, those are their names. Max Sennett's a Hollywood director. Mabel's a waitress from Flatbush, and she comes and makes her big thing. And there's a romance that kind of comes between them, and it's fairly volatile in the musical. Bernadette Peters was in it in the original production.
That's
And
good.
but Drat the Cat is a hysterical little comedy about a naive detective who's looking for a cat burglar, and he falls in love with her. And it's really cute and funny. No one ever does it but I think that's a totally underappreciated musical.
I never heard of that one. So that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah. It's those are the first two that come to mind, is
Yeah.
Mac and Mabel and Drat the Cat.
Yeah. So do you have a beloved show by many that you think is like super overrated? Sounds like you have a number. Jukebox
Overrated.
musicals.
Well, contemporarily speaking, Beetlejuice, like I said, which was a big favorite for a lot of people. I got a lot of heat for deriding Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Well, the one that I have the unpopular opinion on is I was not that high on 6. I just thought it was like so short and didn't have any story. And I just thought it was like kind of a wannabe Hamilton, just not that, I just didn't think it was that great.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I enjoy 6. I don't think it's as good as what some people make it out to be, but I do find it an enjoyable show. I like the premise of it, of having the 6 wives of Henry VIII basically put on a concert telling their stories, which I'm fine with.
Yeah.
Overrated shows.
Another big one as far as classics that I do not love as much as others. I respect it. I don't love Into the Woods.
No, okay, that's fine. I can appreciate that. I mean, when it comes to Sondheim stuff, I'm kind of an outlier. My favorite show is Sunday in the Park with George.
I've never seen that one. I'd like to.
I think it's an awesome show and terribly underappreciated. I get that it has a second act problem,
Mhm.
But I
A lot
don't
of his
I don't
shows
mind
do.
it. I don't mind.
I just
Rent is an overrated show.
okay. Yeah.
Rent is a very overrated show. There are I have issues with the I think it says another musical with the second act issue, that second act problem. It just flies so quickly through the second
Yeah.
act that you're just kind of like, wait a minute, no, slow down. What Angel's dead? Okay, all right, where are we going with this?
That's true. It has a
Uh,
lot of characters to juggle too.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Uh, uh, MJ, I think was overrated.
Mhm.
Uh, I think we spent way too much. I think the actor, I forget his name off the top of my head, who won the Tony playing him, couldn't act himself through a paper bag, but he mimicked Michael Jackson perfectly
Mm,
when it came to dance and voice, but he
yeah.
didn't act him at all.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
heard the dancing was really great in that show,
oh
but
yeah,
yeah.
when you put but if you put his performance side by side with Michael's performance, there's nothing going on here with the
Mm,
actor. And
right.
when you watch Michael Jackson, the actual Michael Jackson live, there's so much coming out of him emotionally through his music and through
Mhm.
his personality and character. And it's just so, I was so bored watching him try and watching the actor act in MJ.
Mhm.
Um,
One
classic
that I thought
shows.
was I don't quite get it is The Band's Visit. I actually really liked the movie. But I don't know, I just thought there was like to me there was like almost nothing memorable about it. I thought the songs were really bland.
I
I I don't know, it just did nothing for me.
I like the band's visit. I think it could have been done as not a musical,
Mhm.
and it probably would have been a little bit
Yeah, I
better.
could see that. A play.
Yeah, just have it as a play. I think it would have been
Yeah.
I think it would have been great. Uh,
I thought
trying to
Omar
think,
Sharif was the only song that like stood out to me and was
and it kind of is. It kind of is. I do
yeah.
like the roller skating sequence, the
Yeah.
roller sequence. I think that's a wonderful bit.
But I would never have picked it over Mean Girls. I think Mean Girls is way better, but that's just but
Uh,
uh but it's more prestige, you know,
it
than
is a prestige piece, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
but it was just that was just a weak season.
Mhm.
There wasn't any fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and I was actually that season was the same as SpongeBob, and I was really looking forward to it. And I just
Actually,
I
SpongeBob was a wonderful show. I really enjoyed
yeah,
SpongeBob.
but it
I've
wasn't
seen it twice now, and it's so much fun.
I don't know. I thought it would be funnier. Like the whole end of the world kind of like it's not a bad show. I didn't hate it, but like I just thought it would be funnier. Like Shrek is so funny.
Mhm.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
So you review shows in Connecticut and in New York, and
Yes.
do you treat them any different from like a Broadway show versus a community or a smaller local theater? Like how do
Well,
you are they on the same
we've got to be
level?
clear here. The uh, Broadway shows are expected to be the best of the
Yeah.
best. And I expect them to give the best of the best. And when it comes to critiquing them, I treat them harder than any other show I
Yeah.
see. Different regional theaters have different equity contracts. So some of the theaters like Goodspeed Musicals and Hartford Stage have these contracts that their cast is supposed to be entirely equity.
Mhm.
There's a few exceptions here and there where there will be some non-equity actors thrown in, depending upon the show.
Yeah.
Then you have theaters like Playhouse on Park in West Hartford, which have a modified equity contract where they'll have, say, a cast of 6, and 2 or 3 of them will be equity and 2 or 3 of them will be non-equity. And it's great for those non-equity actors because it helps them build points in order to become equity actors because
Yeah.
they're in an equity production. And then you have companies like Yale Repertory and Connecticut Repertory, Yale Repertory, obviously, and Yale Connecticut Repertory up in Yukon, which have equity contracts also, but they're educational companies. So they're training companies. So you've got the tendency is that the cast is going to be mostly students, usually grad students, and you'll have a couple equity actors in there to kind of help train them in the process and also give the show a bit of clout. And so when it comes to me reviewing a show, I have to appreciate what the equity contract is at that theater and what I'm going to look at more critically than, say, another company, just based upon those principles. Because like at Connecticut Rep, I've reviewed a few shows up there this season because they've only just started having equity cast members back post pandemic. And I give them a little more leniency because the cast is still learning the trade.
Mhm.
And I want to be more constructive as to how they can improve themselves as actors versus saying to a professional, what do you think you were doing here? You know?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, you know better than this. I expect you to know better than
Mhm.
this. Students, I don't have that expectation with because they're still learning.
Yeah. We have a lot of regional theaters here in
Mhm.
Utah. There's actually not that many that are equity, but sometimes I find the performances to be just as good in the regional performances, in the amateur performances as the equity performances. But the biggest difference is the like quality of the audio. That is the biggest difference that separates
Audio is
in my
always an
in my
issue.
experience from Broadway equity to more amateur productions.
I've never seen. Well, the thing is, when it comes to community theater, I don't review community theater anymore,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because it's too painful.
Yeah.
There's been some community theater that I actually really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Little Theater of Manchester in Manchester, Connecticut, did a surprisingly good production of August Osage County,
Oh, okay.
and which is a extremely difficult play to do.
Yeah.
And it's like 3 hours long. It's full of unlikable characters doing unlikable things to each other, and but on a community theater scale, they nailed it.
Yeah.
Would I put that cast on Broadway? Absolutely not. But it's but when you balance it based upon what you're working with, you give it that recognition.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about Connecticut is that so many shows do go from regional to Broadway.
Yeah.
Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, Anastasia, both came from Hartford Stage
Okay.
and went to Broadway. The Band's Visit was workshopped at Hartford Stage. Come From Away was workshopped at Goodspeed.
Oh. Yeah, we were really excited because one of our equity companies, Pioneer Theater Company, they did the tryout for Shucked last fall. So that was really fun. And
Okay.
so hopefully, because that was a good experience and it's gone down to be so successful, hopefully more companies will do their tryouts here because I would love to see that. That was really
Yeah.
fun.
No, it's awesome when that can happen. John Leguizamo has a new musical called Kiss My Aztec that's going to Broadway soon, and that started out on the West Coast in California, then moved to Connecticut, where Hartford Stage presented it about a year ago, and hopefully within the next year or two it'll go to Broadway also.
So do you have a current show on Broadway that you'd say is your favorite of the current crop?
Favorite show that's currently running?
Mm-hmm.
I think the best musical on Broadway right now is Hamilton, and it's probably going to stay there for a while. Come From Away was my favorite musical on Broadway, and that's recently closed. And I love that show. I was at I think it was the Outer Critic Circle Awards back in 2019, 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Jen Colella, and I practically, I came this close to bawling my eyes out thanking her for that show. Because I was living in New York when it happened, when 9/11 happened, and me, like a lot of people, were so reactive that day.
Sure.
We didn't have time to grieve, and that was one of those shows that allowed me to that was the show that allowed me to emotionally respond to something that I had trouble responding to for a long time, and I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah,
I kind of had a nice moment like that recently because I love the show Bright Star. It's just absolutely one of my favorites. And I just DM'd Edie Brickell on my Instagram and just wanted to tell her how much I loved the show. And she responded back, and that just made me feel really good. I was so happy. Just because it had such a short run, and I think it deserved such a longer run. And it was great to be able to tell her how much I love it.
When it comes to, let's put Hamilton aside.
Yeah.
Because that's Hamilton's an anomaly.
Yeah, it's a legend.
It's like Rent and Phantom. They're just shows that'll run for an extremely long time, and just be
of
happy.
Like the new crop. Like what's
let's
your favorite?
Looking at a post reopening world.
Yeah. There's like Shucked and Kimberly Akimbo, and
Kimberly Akimbo is a fantastic show. That is really a wonderful show. That is of the new musicals that have opened up since the pandemic. That is probably my favorite musical. And when it comes to new musicals, revivals, I love the Sweeney Todd revival. Josh Groban aside, I'm not a big fan of him. He sounds great. He sounds incredible. He's the cleanest, purest sounding Sweeney you'll ever hear music vocally, but he's not scary. I don't find him scary.
I can see that.
Granted, Sweeney is a show that has layers of scary. Sweeney's the scary guy that we root on. It
builds. Yeah. Scary.
Meanwhile, you've got the guy who abducts Joanna, who is supposed to be like the next level scary. It's a revenge story, and nobody is
the judge.
The judge. Nobody Judge Turpin. Nobody is likable in the show aside from Joanna and what's his butt, the guy who's pining over her the entire time.
I love that song, that Joanna, though. It's so beautiful.
Yes. And I'm just like, come on. It's like you're rooting on a guy to kill everybody, and that's the thing about it that I love about Sondheim, is that he makes us look at the human condition and how easy it is for us to be willing to corrupt ourselves to root on somebody to commit violence. And
yeah, I mean, as a whole musical just about assassins,
yeah,
about
Assassins,
violence.
yeah. Oh, as I'm thinking about shows that are running, then we talk about overrated. I think Wicked's overrated. I think I always thought
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah. But I digress.
I'm actually seeing Avenue Q today. I'm going to a local production of Avenue Q, which I've never seen before, but obviously
That's a fun show.
It beat Wicked at Tony, so I'm very
Yeah.
curious to
Yeah.
see it.
Avenue Q's an hysterical, dirty little show.
Yeah.
It's great in that respect. Yeah.
All
Plays. When it
Oh no,
comes to
sorry, go ahead.
when it comes to plays,
You like that Thanksgiving play, it seemed like.
the Thanksgiving play was good. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's
Mhm.
like Tony Award great by any means.
Mm.
I think it was daring. I think it was smart in any weird way. I think it could have been done better with a different director.
Mm.
I think it could have been focused a little bit better. But when it comes to plays, it's kind of been a season of revivals for plays. The Piano Lesson was pretty good. Top Dog Underdog was the performances in Top Dog Underdog were really good, though I feel like the play is a little long. It could have been trimmed down a bit. There's a lot of redundance.
So many, I think modern musicals could use a good edit.
Well,
There's so many that feel like, okay, this, like, even, I mean, I like Matilda, but
yeah,
I think it's way too long. And I think you could take out the entire escapologist plot.
yeah,
All the fantasy sequences I think are unnecessary, and it's just not needed.
yeah.
That's what I would do.
Good Night Oscar is a fantastic play. I would recommend that.
Okay.
Fat Ham I thought was really good, which it's a hysterical little play about it's taking the play Hamlet and putting it in the backyard of a black family about having a barbecue
Oh,
in
interesting.
in like central eastern United States.
Uh-huh.
And it's smart. It's really clever.
I tell you, one I didn't love was I did not love the Aaron Sorkin adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird.
No,
I did not like the way that they turned Atticus into this like country bumpkin hick. Like it just did not, like, they took out all of the gravitas. It was not my favorite.
well, he is kind of a country bumpkin.
But it was too
He's
much.
smart.
It was too much.
Smart. That's I guess
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that we got to respect his intelligence. I didn't
Like,
really
you
get
want to
that.
be inspired watching To Kill a Mockingbird. You want to feel like there's one person fighting the good fight that isn't afraid to stand up for lost causes.
Well,
That he knows he's not going to win, but he's going to do his best. And I just felt, I don't know, I just didn't like it.
well, that's also dependent upon whether or not if you've read The Watchtower,
Yeah, that's fair, but
because Atticus is actually racist.
yeah.
Excuse me, but he also puts the rule of law ahead of his personal biases. And and I think that's one of the things to consider, is that regardless of what anybody's opinion is of I forget the name of the man who is the defendant, is that he deserves just as much.
Tom Robinson.
Tom Robinson, is that he deserves just as much a right to a fair trial as anybody else. And Atticus understands that, which is kind of an ironic stance if you take into account that Atticus is supposed to be racist as far as the Watchtower is concerned. My problem with To Kill a
I guess I don't
Mockingbird,
really make that canon. I mean, maybe other people technically do, I guess, but I don't.
My one problem with To Kill a Mockingbird, and it is the was the change in the house servant role
Mm.
and giving her more
Yeah, I didn't like
agency.
that. I agree.
It was, I get the intent. It's like you're trying to give voice to a character who doesn't have much in the original story, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, yeah, but she's a Black woman in the South in the early 20th century. She wasn't going to be treated fairly anyways, and wasn't going to be given much of a voice. It was, I think it was a socio-political move by Sorkin, and it was disingenuous.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, before we go, we have some fun get to know you questions we like to end off with.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more. Life of Pi. That's the best play.
Oh, okay.
right
Okay,
now.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Gorgeous show. Go see it.
Well, what is the best ice cream flavor?
New York Super Fudge Chunk. Ben and Jerry's.
Okay, good. What's your favorite color?
Green.
Outside of show tunes, what music are you into?
Everything.
Oh, nice. Okay. What is your go-to date night food?
Ugh. I don't really have a go-to. I mix it up.
Mhm.
I rarely order the same thing 2 nights in a row. Whether it also depends on the restaurant I'm going to.
Yeah.
One night it'll be I'll get a steak. The next night I'll get scallops and risotto. So
You like mixing it up.
yeah. I can't get the same thing over and over again. It's that's boring.
I'm the opposite. Once I find something I like, I'm clocked in. I know I like it. I get people are like, why don't you try? Then I do. I try something new. And then I'm always wishing I had gotten the one thing that I know I like.
Though I will say, if there is one thing on the menu that if I'm at a Mexican place, if there's chimichangas, I'll go for the chimichanga.
Oh, okay. Every
If
time.
if it's a fine dining restaurant, if they have duck, I'll almost always go for the duck.
Okay. Cool.
I love duck. It's actually highly recommend. There's a restaurant. There's a little French place in New York City. I think it's on 48th Street or 50th Street thereabouts in Hell's Kitchen called Chez Napoleon.
Oh.
And they've got a fantastic duck à l'orange.
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
Yum. Which do you like better, dogs or cats?
I have to say cats because I have 2 cats.
Nice. Okay, good.
Coincidentally named Benjamin, Barker, and Lucy.
Oh. All right. Which do you like
reference.
better, beaches or mountains?
Mountains.
Oh, nice. Okay. What's your favorite holiday to celebrate?
Thanksgiving.
Nice. Okay. And last question. What is your favorite musical movie?
Favorite movie musical?
Movie musical, yeah.
I can give you a top 5
Okay.
that change, maybe even a top 3. The original West Side Story.
Uh,
I'm a big Leonard Bernstein fan, always have been, and Jerome Robbins's choreography and for that is brilliant, and I love the
Yeah.
structure of it more than the Spielberg one. Singing in the Rain.
so good.
An American in Paris.
So good. Love that
yeah.
too.
Yeah. I
Big
think those are
dance movies then.
Yeah, those are my
All
big
3
3.
of those.
Those
Very
are my
dance.
big 3. There are other ones I like. 7 Brides for Seven Brothers.
Another big dance one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Moulin Rouge, I think, is another great musical, movie musical. But I think those 3 in particular. There the other musicals I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of. I like
Mhm.
Guys and Dolls, On to
Mhm.
Town. I think those are great movie musicals, but they have problems that.
Yeah. Did you ever read the Stephen Sondheim movie review of Guys and Dolls? It's pretty
No.
fascinating. He like when he was young, he there was like a brief period where he was writing movie reviews, Steven
Okay.
Sondheim. You can find him online if you like. It's pretty interesting.
I
Yeah.
just remember all the horror stories of Frank Sinatra being really difficult to work with in that
Oh,
film.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure Brando was like,
oh, Brando can't sing. That was, I was like, why are you casting Brando as Sky Masterson? And he's not a singer.
yeah.
And, no, but Sinatra, the story as I heard was that the director wanted to do take after take, and Sinatra's not a multi-take actor.
Mm,
He's a one and done kind of guy. It's like
Yeah.
he always felt that his first take was always his best, and it just got worse from there. And Sinatra got so pissed off with it that he decided that he said after the film was over that he was never going to perform a song from Guys and Dolls ever again, which was a total lie, because Luck Be a Lady was one of his signature songs afterward.
Right. Maybe he just meant his songs.
Well, yeah, he was playing Nathan Detroit, so I'm not like, but seriously, what, Nathan doesn't really have any solos. So he's always singing duets and trios
that's
throughout
true.
the movie. So yeah.
That's true. Well, very good. You answered all the questions. Thank you so much for doing this. This was a ton of fun. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if people want to find your content, your channel and everything, how do they do that?
Just go to YouTube, look up One Man's Opinion, and
Yes.
that's where it'll be. I'm wrapping up my second season right now, almost about to hit the 100 show mark for season 2. That's how many shows I've reviewed this year. So yeah, One Man's Opinion on
That's a
on
lot.
YouTube. It's 100 shows.
Yeah.
I gotta put the work in. You know?
Yeah, that's a lot. It really is. Well, very good. We'll have all that information in the description. People can check it out. And thanks again for coming on.
And support. And if you end up liking this stuff, support me on Patreon.
Yeah. You should check out the Patreon. We'd like to thank Tim for coming on for Theater Tuesdays. This was so much fun. I had a great time talking with him. I hope you all enjoyed it. And put all your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter. And please, if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much also. And check out my Patreon. Would really appreciate that. And the merch store. And thanks so much again to Tim. We'll talk to you later. Bye.